Dear President Biden,
our family survived the Holocaust.
The world watched as Nazis dehumanized our people,
calling them a dangerous threat.
Evil.
Vermin.
Our families were rounded up,
starved, tortured, murdered, burned, and buried in mass graves.
Ordinary people chose silence, looking away.
We understand that the world allowed these horrors to take place,
and that we must act to ensure that this can never happen again.
To anyone.
That's why today, President Biden,
on International Holocaust Remembrance Day,
we are addressing you directly.
The lesson of the Holocaust is never again for anyone.
You have enabled and facilitated the Israeli government's genocide of Palestinians.
And it must stop now.
We have seen this before. A whole people demonized, targeted for slaughter.
Families dying under rubble, pregnant women starved.
Human beings tagged with numbers.
Mass graves and piles of bodies. Children who watched their whole families annihilated.
Men stripped naked or shot in the street.
The Israeli government is committing genocide against Palestinians.
You have responded by sending more weapons into their hands.
As descendants of those who survived the Holocaust,
we demand that you end your complicity. Never again is now.
We will spend this day of remembrance
fighting to stop the genocide of Palestinians.
We believe in a future in which all people,
Palestinian and Israeli,
can live in justice, dignity,
safety, and freedom.
We call on you to demand an immediate ceasefire
and to stop sending weapons to Israel.
Welcome, happy Saturday to the JB Font channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this Saturday afternoon. Today is January 27, 2024. I am your host. Welcome, come on in. We're going to have a conversation. Sit on down. It's good to see you here with me today. Just to let you guys know, the JB Font channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can see me there on Sundays and Thursdays, and you can typically see me here on Tuesdays as well. So just to let you guys know, if you guys have not, you guys can also go to my Substack for email notifications. Go to jbfont.substack.com so you guys are aware of these email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write articles, so you have that there as well. So thank you so very much in advance. As well as just to let you guys know, if you guys have not already, make sure to give the stream a like. Thank you so very much. This helps me out with the algorithm, so it is very, very much appreciated from all of you. Now, one of the things we're going to be talking about, we're going to get right into it, is what are we talking about today? We're talking about unsafe zone. So we're going to be talking about the story that maybe some of you have heard already, but we're going to talk about it. I'm going to give my thoughts on what's really going on, especially in the quote-unquote safe zones that Israel determined, but something happened to these group of people here, and I would like to talk about it and report on it myself. So we're going to be talking about that. And then also some breaking news that happened yesterday. But from that breaking news, I say, don't celebrate just yet. So this is going to be a very interesting story to talk about as well. So the first thing we're going to go to is the unsafe zone. And this is going to pour into our next segment. One of the reasons why I want to do this story first is because this actually happened before the ruling from the ICJ that has happened as of yesterday. So now we are seeing all this play out while the ICJ is actually in session, and then the ICJ ruling that happened yesterday. So this is going going to be more about Palestine today. So this is going to be something I think that everybody should be keenly aware of and interested in. So here we go. The genocidal war against Gaza continues by Israel, and the death toll rises above 25,000 in the last 100 days. As the more Palestinians flee to safety, the war crimes committed by Israel build up. This is a war crime that is committed in a safe zone. This zone was declared safe by Israel for residents in Gaza to stay in, but now it is unsafe because of the violence perpetuated by Israel. Israel was caught in high definition committing a war crime. Now, I can only show certain parts of this video due to YouTube's guidelines, but I'll share as best as what I can. This is going to be kind of tough, but just letting you guys know, this is deeply important. So I'm going to share this with you guys really quick. And this is what the people in the outset were actually talking about. And this is why this is so important. All right, so share the screen.
And that still seems a long way off. Assessments will be made and investigations will begin into how it was conducted by both sides, Hamas and Israel, whether the rules of war were followed. Tonight, News at 10 has evidence of a group of unarmed Palestinians carrying a white flag coming under fire in an area Israeli troops are now trying to capture, having previously declared it a place of safety. One of the group was hit and fatally wounded as our cameraman filmed. The Israel Defense Force has dismissed our evidence. The IDF is not aware of this incident, they told us. But our filming has, however, already raised questions about a possible war crime. What we are about to show is, by its very nature, distressing.
This is the edge of the supposedly safe area called Al-Mawasi that the Israelis have been encouraging Gazan civilians to flee to. These makeshift homes have been vacated because the war is getting closer. The billowing smoke was evidence of the new Israeli offensive in Khan Yunis that has been forcing more families to evacuate and seek safety elsewhere.
No place safety in Gaza. Everywhere you are going, you will find the Israeli army. They are shoot us at home, any building, in the street, everywhere you are. They will give you a chance, sometimes just for 5 minutes, sometimes do not give you any chance to take your clothes, to take your children, to take your family, and to get out of the building. This is our life in Gaza. It's very difficult.
First of all, I want to reflect on that piece right there, because a lot of people, they will dehumanize people who are from Gaza, people who are Palestinian, and say, well, they're just all terrorists. Put yourselves in the shoes of that gentleman that was just shown. When you get to a point of dehumanizing people, you don't see them as fully human. You don't empathize with people. And so just imagine for a second being woken up in the dead of night and told you have 5 minutes to gather your belongings and your family and leave. How would you fare in that situation? Let's continue.
These pictures were filmed by a cameraman working for ITV News in Gaza. As he moved forwards towards the combat zone, he noticed this group of men doing their utmost to appear non-threatening, trying to proceed with care. They wanted to reach 2 other family members and get them out of harm's way.
I want you guys to pay attention to this gentleman in the glasses, because this is very important. So let's continue.
حوالي 50 نازح او 70 نازح موجودين في البيت الثاني اللي يخش علينا اليهود وطلعونا واخويا ما طلعوش.
So he's trying to get his mother and his brother out, but the Israelis are preventing it. And so remember what I said, they have like 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to wake up, grab your things from your family and leave. And so people get separated easily in situations like that. So I think that's really important to take into context.
بدنا نروح يعني نطلع ان شاء الله.
The interview complete, our cameraman walked away. And then...
So unfortunately, due to this part, I have to kind of fast forward. The reason being is because the gentleman in glasses that they just interviewed was shot and killed by IOF forces. What you just saw was him minutes before he died. Remember, this is a safe zone. Allegedly. Declared safe by Israel. So let me fast forward to, let me see, wait, hold on. Oh, come on, Twitter. Sorry. Okay.
Tel Aviv.
Well, the Israel Defense Forces assessment of our filming was that it had, they claimed, clearly been edited in the first instance. Of course, they have a duty to investigate the incident. John's been taking...
So one of the things I wanted to also bring up was right after he was shot, they took the white flag that they were waving and they placed it on him. The white flag started becoming bloody as they were carrying him away, which is part of which they were carrying him away so they can get to safety because the Israelis were shooting at them. His wife, who was further along, she ran back as soon as she heard that he got shot. She was screaming and crying, and they were trying to carry him. Then, as soon as they got to a safe distance, they tried doing CPR to revive him. They were unsuccessful. He perished. And so this is what happens in safe zones that was declared by Israel. So let's continue the video.
Look at it and seeking legal opinion on what it shows, John.
Julie, more than 25,000 deaths have been reported in Gaza since the 7th of October. Mainly civilians, many women and many children. Israel's critics already say that amounts to a war crime. But now just one more killing, this time beneath a white flag, the international symbol of surrender. Is it enough to reach the same damning judgment? A civil rights lawyer who watched our video says it is compelling evidence.
This group of 5 people are unarmed. They don't have any weapons of any kind. They're waving a white flag. They do not present a threat. So to shoot them without warning, just like that, it's an execution.
Now, this is not the first time nor the first war in which the Israeli army has been accused of firing on innocents carrying a white flag. After an Israeli incursion into Gaza at the end of 2008, human rights groups documented 11 such deaths. A subsequent UN inquiry blamed both sides for human rights abuses. Then 2 months ago, 3 Israeli hostages, Alon Shamritz, Yatom Chaim, and Samir Talaka, escaped their captors and approached Israeli troops waving a white cloth. All 3 were shot dead. After that, the army's chief of staff made public a clear message to his troops: think before pulling the trigger.
ואם זה שני עזתים עם דגל לבן שיוצאים להיכנע, מה, אנחנו יורים בהם?
Now, he's telling them that if 2 Gazans with a white flag come out to surrender, would we shoot at them? Absolutely not, he says. Now, Israel calls its army the most moral on earth, that it does all it can to protect civilians. But lawyers tell us that if that is sincere, it is their legal duty to now investigate.
Maybe there are circumstances why this event happened. We don't know. But on the face of it, it seems to be a violation of the responsibility of an occupying force and the rules of engagement. Now we have to see, will there be an investigation?
Separately, of course, Israel is facing a judgment from the International Court of Justice on a charge of genocide. But accusing an army of committing a crime is easy. The actual facts can get lost in the fog of war. Securing a conviction, Julie, that is rare.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed for taking us through all of that. We can return now to John Irvine in Tel Aviv tonight. And John, this incident raises more questions, doesn't it, over how this war is being conducted, especially now with so many deaths.
Yes, Julia, I think this chips away at Israel's moral authority and makes it more difficult for Israel's allies to support.
Moral authority. You know, it's interesting how a lot of times these imperialist countries will call themselves moral. Yet when you look at what's going on with what the United States has done in places like Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, multiple different countries, it feels like Israel is just following the footsteps of the United States. There are countless recounts of what this moral military has done to civilians primarily. It's not looking good for them. It's not looking good.
Support this campaign. Add to this the fact that yesterday was Israel's deadliest day inside Gaza, and you're left with the impression that from the Israeli point of view, this war isn't going terribly well. That's perhaps why divisions are opening up within the Israeli war cabinet and between Israel and its most important ally, the United States. Now, the Prime Minister here, Mr. Netanyahu, is maintaining that he is trying to achieve the twin goals of crushing Hamas and freeing the hostages. He maintains that that is achievable. But there are those in the war cabinet and in Washington who disagree with him, who say those two goals are incompatible and that the hostages should be prioritized. Mr. Netanyahu is hedging his bets. He maintained tonight that total victory is what he's after, but he also empowered his negotiators to offer Hamas a new truce, a 2-month ceasefire in exchange for the release of the remaining hostages. So negotiations are continuing, Julie. Mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and the United States certainly are not wasting their time.
They do not care about the hostages. I can tell you that right now. If they did, this will be going a lot more different than what it is already. The caring about hostages, it's a farce. As these war crimes continue to happen, it is making it much more difficult for the U.S. State Department to justify Israel's actions and making it more difficult for Israel to justify its actions against Palestinians. There are literally innocent people who are trying to get out of harm's way. We're seeing that this is never about protecting innocent lives. This is about extermination and taking the land. When someone's trying to exterminate people, they want one of two outcomes. So, either they can die on the land so that it can be taken, or they can flee and be too scared to return the land so that they take the land. This is why Israel wants the Palestinian people to flee to Egypt. Make no mistake. They don't want to return even if it's peacefully. Remember the March of Return that happened a few years back when Palestinians were peacefully going to the fence, trying to get access back to the land that was stolen from them? What happened? Israeli defense soldiers pointed at their knees and shot them. Some of those got smoked because they did not want them to return, even though they were doing it via peaceful means. So that's what happens. This is also why Israel is willing to take out their own hostages in situations instead of saving them. This is called the Hannibal Directive. So let's go ahead and take a look at the explanation of the Hannibal Directive, because a lot of people, especially here in the West, they don't hear about things like this. And so once you find out exactly what it is, then you realize, dear God, is this how they feel? So let me share my screen so that you guys can get this. So let me share this.
You have been told that Israel wants to save the hostages. Captured on October 7th. But what if you've been lied to? What if Israel's war cabinet has no intention of saving them? An investigative journalist made a bombshell discovery. Filmmaker and journalist Dan Cohen acquired secret recordings of the Netanyahu government pressuring Israeli families to sacrifice their children in Gaza in order for the genocide to continue, so that Israel can conquer and colonize Gaza for good. Stick around, because I'm about to reveal the sickening details of this explosive investigation that confirms Israel's policy of sacrificing their own people. And you'll be surprised to hear that this theory is supported by prominent Israelis and has been reported by Israeli media. Yes, you heard that right. Israeli media. Now, I'm sure you've heard about the controversial Hannibal Directive, which is the Israeli doctrine of killing their own people to prevent the Palestinians from using them as bargaining chips during negotiations and prisoner swaps. The Hannibal Directive is a doctrine of sacrifice named after the Carthaginian general, who was one of the single greatest threats to Rome to ever live. For years, Hannibal delivered blow after humiliating blow to the Roman Empire. And even after the fall of Carthage, Hannibal swore an oath of revenge. So the Romans chased Hannibal across the world, hoping to capture him. But when they got close to doing just that, Hannibal decided he would rather die than allow himself to be captured, and so swallowed a vial of poison that he always kept with him just for such a situation. Israel sees killing its own citizens in much the same way, so as to deny their enemies any leverage during negotiations. Now,
So here's my thing. How do the families of these hostages feel? How would you feel if that was your family member? If your family member was taken hostage and then your government decided to smoke those hostages, your family members, as a tactic so that they don't have to negotiate. And also, it's not that the people who took your family members as hostages want to get rid of you. Why take hostages then? No, it's because they ultimately just want the land back that was stolen from them. How would you feel? This is interesting because a lot of times people will go, well, we have to go after them because look what they did on October 7th. But people don't want to talk about what happened on October 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 1st. 2nd and 1st. People don't want to talk about what happened in 2014, what happened in 2008, what happened in 1967. And yet, people will say, well, October 7th, without looking at everything that Israel did prior to that. Let's continue.
While it was speculated by many in the aftermath of October 7th that Israel implemented the Hannibal Directive, it has now become crystal clear, even irrefutable through Israeli media, no less, that Israel had done exactly that.
נוהל חניבל כנראה הופעל באיזשהו שלב, כי ברגע שהבינו שיש חטיפה, אז הם מיד אומרים, חבר'ה, זה חניבל.
But what if I told you this mass Hannibal is still happening? That it has been happening every day since October 7th? What if I told you that a major aim of the genocide in Gaza was in fact the continuation of this mass Hannibal? On January 15th, the Palestinians released a video of Israeli hostage Noah Argamani. Noah says that she had been injured in an Israeli airstrike and was trapped under the rubble for 2 whole days. She also says that 2 other Israeli hostages had been killed by Israeli strikes, one buried underneath the rubble and the other in a moving ambulance in Gaza. She implored Netanyahu to stop this madness and bring us home to our families. But these aren't the only Israeli hostages who have been killed or injured. According to Hamas, nearly 60 hostages have been killed by Israeli strikes.
You heard that correctly. So when it comes to people talking about October 7th, some of that blame actually falls on whose hands? There's literal footage, which I can show it on here. There's literal helicopter footage from the IDF of them shooting their own people. And so while you can say people will want to condemn whatever Hamas did, why aren't people condemning what Israel did? I think that's important. Because some of those deaths were at the hands of their own government.
Several Israeli hostages released by Hamas have described the terror of being held in Gaza, unsure of whether or not they'd be killed by their own government.
את כל הפיצוצים של ישראל, פיצוצים מאוד גדולים. היה המון פעמים שאמרתי לעצמי, בסוף אני ימות מה...
She says, in the end, I will die from Israel's missiles and not from Hamas. When you're scared of your own government more than the people who captured you, you know something's wrong. I'm just saying, right?
טילים של ישראל, ולא מהחמאס.
An Israeli sociologist and military expert, Yagil Levy, told the Israeli newspaper Haaretz that Israel is indeed trying to carry out a mass Hannibal. The government's decision to attack Gaza, despite the presence of hostages in the bombed sites, can be considered an extension of the Hannibal procedure. That is, an attempt to thwart the continuation of the captivity, even at the cost of risking the lives of the hostages. The obvious explanation is that the right perceives the pressure to stop the fighting as endangering the pursuit of victory and revenge in Gaza. And therefore, the lives of the abductees are another reasonable sacrifice that must be made. A reasonable and necessary sacrifice to justify the Gaza genocide. Gilad Shalit was a captured Israeli soldier that the Palestinians traded for over 1,000 Palestinians. In an interview with the Israeli media outlet Shomrim, an unnamed figure who was involved in the Gilad Shalit exchange said that Israel was invoking the Hannibal Directive. He says, Hamas expected this to be a repeat of the Shalit case. They thought that they would kidnap Israelis and that we would cave in. But the state of Israel has implemented the Hannibal Directive on the whole of the Gaza Strip. Now, as you can imagine, the families of the hostages are not happy about this. They want their loved ones to be brought home. They're angry, and they have been organizing massive demonstrations, calling on Netanyahu to strike a deal and end the war.
So even the people, even the Israelis are pissed off and saying we need to stop. Isn't that interesting? They're pissed. It's starting to sound like a lot of us here in the United States, when the government does some horrible things abroad and we don't want our young men and women and people to go and fight on behalf of the corporations. Doesn't that sound like us? You're going to see a lot of similarities between how we feel in the United States versus how Israelis feel about what's going on and the IDF going to commit genocide in Gaza. Let's continue.
Save their loved ones and live up to their promise of bringing them home, which was supposedly a key objective for Israel in this war. And some of the demonstrators are former hostages themselves. And so Netanyahu has been gaslighting the families of these hostages to convince them to sacrifice their own children so that he can achieve his political ambition of conquering Gaza and ethnically cleansing the Palestinians from it. You see, to Netanyahu and his cabinet, the families of the hostages are nothing but an obstacle that stands in the way of Israel's genocide in Gaza. But more importantly to him, they are endangering his political career. In a private meeting between Netanyahu and the family of the hostages, several far right-wing extremists whose family members were also taken hostage were brought in to try and convince everyone else that their pain should be set aside for the greater interests of the Israeli state. One of these far right-wing extremists, Ohad Zvi Lapidot, addressed the families. This is a secret audio recording of that exchange.
So I want you guys to listen closely, and I'm going to be reading what they say because I think this is very important for you guys to see the depravity of some of these Zionists who are willing to sacrifice their own family members just for the expansion of a state that is literally taking the land from an indigenous people. Let's just be real. That's exactly what it is. So, let's go. He said, we are at a historic moment. And in this historic moment, personal pain can't drive you.
Outraged, a mother of one of the hostages responded.
She says, first they need to be freed. That's what needs to be done, nothing else.
What Lapidot said next set fire to the room.
He said there is a prime minister whose job it is to see the whole of Israel in the general role. He said there is a chess game. There are pawns. Let me ask you this. What if your family member was called a pawn? How would you feel about that? Would you just be okay? Would you say, well, okay, you know, in the greater grand scheme of things, my family member is a pawn? Or would you be livid? I would be the latter. She says, but it's not pawns. It's not pawns. It's children. It's old people. It's babies. Civilian population. She says, sorry, Mr. Prime Minister, we are not here for a political discussion.
Now, as you can clearly tell, there is division amongst the families. Yet, after the meeting, the far right-wing extremist family members in support of Netanyahu, sacrificing their children for conquest, went outside and spoke directly to the media, pretending to represent all of the families that had met with Netanyahu.
אני אמרתי לכולם, גם אני מאוד מאוד אוהב את הבן שלי. אבל אם אני צריך לבחור בין הבן שלי, בין אהבת הבן שלי לבין אהבת האומה, אני בוחר באהבת האומה.
He basically said, if I had to choose between the love of my family and the love of my nation, I choose my nation. So no matter what your nation does, screw your family? Is that what we're at? Something's not right here. Something's not right. Does that make any sense to you? It's wild, man. Let's continue.
אנחנו נשדר את החוזק. אנחנו עכשיו נקראים לדגל, ואם צריך להקריב את הקורבן, אנחנו נקריב את הקורבן.
By dividing the families and using guilt to dissuade them from standing in his way and then lying to both the public and the media, Netanyahu seeks to maintain his position that Gaza must be completely wiped off the map. This psyop, this lie, this betrayal of the families of the hostages of the Israeli citizenry, who are nothing but pawns to Israeli leadership, is how Netanyahu has been able to convince Israeli society to continue the war. Ever since this psyop took place, Netanyahu's war cabinet has implemented a mass Hannibal policy in Gaza, wiping out their hostages and removing all obstacles to the ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people. In one case, the IDF used poison gas to kill an Israeli hostage being held in an underground tunnel. In a chilling social media post, the mother of the murdered hostage said her son crushed his fingers trying to dig his way out of the tunnel before choking to death on the poisonous gas. She writes,
they're using gas chambers. Anybody noticing a trend? Like the old saying goes, history may not repeat itself, but it damn sure rhymes.
rightly asks, if it were Netanyahu's son being held hostage, would the IDF have acted so recklessly? She went on to say that there is no future for this country after what they did to you. This poor mother raises an important point. What is the point of establishing a safe home for the Jews and expanding your territory through conquest for your own people if you have to murder your own people to achieve it?
That's the question that a lot of people should ask. Why are we willing to sacrifice for the sake of conquest? for the sake of just taking something from somebody else so that you can have it, so that you can extract the resources. And the resources go to whom? Does it actually go to the people, or does the resources actually go to the corporations, which are really the ones who actually run the government, right? Like puppet masters. I think that's something that we need to take into consideration here.
החטופים לא הולך ביחד. אמרנו, הלחימה מסכנת אותם והלחימה הורגת אותם. 9 יום הוא שרד שם, בחיים, בסיוט, בזוועה, זוועת עולם, בשביל שפשוט יהרגו אותו. אומרים שהחזרת החטופים זה בראש סדרי עדיפויות. ואם לא, אז משקרים לנו כל הזמן. וזה מה שזאת האמת. פשוט משקרים לנו, מקריבים אותם, מוותרים עליהם, עליי ויתרו לגמרי.
There is so much more in this bombshell investigation conducted by Dan Cohen, so check out the link to his article. And remember, we all know that the algorithm censors and bans content like this.
So I'm going to share that also into the chat. But make no mistake of what's going on is that people say, oh, we just want the hostages released. Israel doesn't believe in that. Now, the Palestinian resistance, yes, they do. That's why they took hostages in the first place, so they can do an exchange. But Israel doesn't believe in that. Because if they did, there wouldn't have been as many people that died on October 7th. Those 3 young men that were waving the white flag, one of them German, wouldn't have been killed. And don't tell me, oh my God, they could have had on suicide vests, blah, blah, blah. No, because they literally took their shirts off to show that they didn't have those. And they were waving white shirts, basically a sign of surrender. And they were still killed. That's what happened. Because ultimately, it is not about saving the lives of civilians. This is settler colonialism. This is terrorism. Don't stop talking about the crimes Israel has committed. Do not support anyone that is fine with the illegal occupation in place. Now, like I said before, a ceasefire is not good enough. The illegal occupation and apartheid must end. Any candidate that is running for office right now must be on board with the ending of the occupation and apartheid to get my vote. That's nothing less. Like, the ending of the occupation is the floor for me. I hope it's the floor for you too. Because when they say, oh, we just want a ceasefire, no. That's not good enough. That doesn't do it for me. Now, there's only a few candidates that actually fit that criteria. And none of them are part of the duopoly. None of them are Democrat or Republican. We have to remember that these people who are saying, even if they say we just need a ceasefire or humanitarian pause, and then what? What's after that? Because I don't see anything else, any other answers from them after that. So let me share this as well. I thought I put it in my notes, but it's all good. A spokesperson was asked about this as well. actually, let me go here first, because Netanyahu actually rejected a ceasefire. That's right, rejected one. So I'm going to share my screen really quick, because a lot of times people will go, well, we need to exchange hostages. You can't exchange hostages without a ceasefire. But that's the way it goes. So this is from Dan Cohen. If you guys have not, great account to follow, great journalist. He says, one day after Netanyahu rejected a ceasefire, families of captives in Gaza stormed the Knesset, meeting to demand an immediate deal. Quote, "You will not sit here while our children die," end quote. The Israeli government is sacrificing its own people. So they're speaking Hebrew. So
זה לא ימשיך ככה, תדעו לכם, זה לא יכול להמשיך ככה. אתם לא תשבו כאן ולנו מתים שם הילדים שלנו. כולכם אם אתם חושבים שמישהו יכול להמשיך ככה. לא יכול להמשיך.
תנו להם להגיד מה שהם רוצים. תעזוב אותו, תן לו להגיד מה שהוא רוצה.
אתם לא תשבו כאן והם שם.
תעזוב אותו. תעזוב אותו, תן לו להגיד מה שהוא רוצה. תעזוב אותה.
אנחנו לא אלימים. עזבי אותי. אל תגיעי בו.
So my question to you is, how would you react if you knew that this was happening to your kids, to your loved ones? Some of the ones that were kidnapped, we seen, were elderly. The video was released a couple months back. What if that was your grandmother? Was that your father, your sister, your sibling? What if that was your spouse? Would you react this way? Would you react the same way? I know I would. I do not consent to sacrificing my family just so that you can gain some territory, so that you can build, the Ben Gurion Canal, or you can extract some liquefied natural gas and put some pumps off at the coast to extract oil. Like, no. But does this remind you of something? Does this remind you of something? You know what it reminds me of? What was our troops doing in Iraq? What were they doing in Afghanistan? What were they actually there for? Was it just to protect our democracy, to keep us safe? No, absolutely not. You know what our troops were doing there for? To do what the same directive is for police within our borders, to protect capital, to extract resources so that they can have those resources, so that they can make more money. This is what the sacrifice is for. So that corporations can continue to make more money, to take more out of the earth, and to own that land. This is what is going on. And so I don't care what anybody says. Your extraction of resources, your stealing of land does not take precedent over my family's life. And that's exactly how some of these Israelis feel. They're not willing to sacrifice that. That's why they were willing to storm the Knesset, because they said, no, absolutely not. So that was from Dan Cohen. I hope to get him on one day. I would love to be able to get him on. But in the meantime, we have that, which is wonderful from him. So thank you so very much, Dan Cohen, for that. I also want to share this as well. Here is proof of what Netanyahu said. Netanyahu's a monster. I'm putting that into the record right now. This man is a monster. Oh, all right.
אנחנו ממשיכים במלחמה בכל החזיתות ובכל הגזרות. אנחנו לא נותנים חסינות לאף מחבל, לא בעזה, לא בלבנון, לא בסוריה ולא בשום מקום. מי שמנסה לפגוע בנו, אנחנו פוגעים בו.
So here's my thing. If you really want to exchange hostages, then you'll do a ceasefire. But if you don't want to do a ceasefire, then that means you don't care about them. Which means that you don't care about the Palestinians that are actually trying to flee.
אנחנו החזרנו עד היום 110 מהחטופים הביתה, אנחנו מחויבים להחזיר את כולם. זהו אחד מיעדי המלחמה, והלחץ הצבאי הוא תנאי הכרחי להשלמתו. אני עובד בעניין הזה סביב השעון, אבל שיהיה ברור, אני דוחה על הסף את תנאי הכניעה של מפלצות החמאס.
Says Netanyahu said Hamas is demanding Israeli forces withdraw and the release of Palestinians held by Israel in exchange for the remaining hostages. Says Netanyahu has also rejected all calls from the U.S., its closest ally, for post-war plans that would include a path to Palestinian statehood. So there you go. He doesn't want Palestinians to actually have a state. He doesn't believe in a two-state solution. He damn sure doesn't believe in a one-state solution, because if they did have a single state, that means that all Palestinians would also have to have equal rights. And Palestinians would literally be the majority. So they don't want that either. So what do they want them to do? You guys remember, and I'm saying this in regards to Zionists. You guys remember the movie Independence Day? Remember when the president was in Area 51 and the alien communicated with him? And he was like, well, maybe we can come to a peace. We can learn to coexist. And what did the alien say? He said, peace, no peace. And he was like, well, and the president was like, what do you want us to do? I'll let you guys finish, because I got to be careful here on YouTube. But that's basically what's happening. Because when you've murdered 25,000, and then on top of it, you bomb churches, yes, Christians, mosques, hospitals, refugee camps, and residential buildings. When you've done all that, you have basically said that you do not care about the lives of civilians. And you're using the Palestinian resistance as an excuse to exterminate the Palestinian people from the region, from their home. So that is how people like Netanyahu actually feel about the people who are in Palestine. It is sad and it is disgusting, especially in regards to what they're doing in Palestine. Not to mention they're now trying to attack Iran. The U.S. is literally not trying, but they are bombing Yemen now. So it's now direct. So let's go to this, because the State Department, they were asked about the murder of a civilian that was waving the white flag. And the State Department was like, I can't see nothing. The State Department, they were like, well, we don't know. We don't know all the details. Like, the video's right in front of you. The State Department literally pulled a John Cena. Can't see me. That's what they did. Let's share this.
Yeah. Go ahead in the back. Yeah.
You may have had the chance to see some of the footage shot by our cameraman in the Gaza Strip, widely shared online, showing a group of men waving a white flag, representing no threat whatsoever, unarmed, and moving south to try and reach some relatives. The IDF opened fire, as you can see on that video, and killed one of them, Abu Salul. I wonder what your response to that is, and whether you think from watching that video, whether that potentially represents a war crime.
I have seen that footage, but I am not going to comment on the specifics around that, given I'm not aware of the full circumstances on the ground. And as we've said before, this is not an American operation. But beyond that, please don't. I'm happy to take.
Wait. 1 second. So if China had did this, if Russia had did this, if DPRK, Cuba, Venezuela, you guys would have said that's a war crime. You guys would have answered that question clearly. By the way, it's funny when now you see all these people who are the spokespeople for the State Department and the Pentagon and all that. A lot of them are now brown. Interesting how they put these people, brown people, in these positions now. But anyways, they would have called that out immediately. But because it's Israel, we can't discuss it. It wasn't U.S. forces, so we really don't want to get into it. Sorry, but yes, I've seen it, but I don't know the entire situation. It's right in front of your eyes. This is blatant disregard for life. Blatant disregard.
Your questions, if you'll allow me, to answer. I don't interrupt you. ask you to not do the same. As a general matter, though, we have not parsed our words about the moral and strategic imperative that the government of Israel and the Israeli security forces have to take every effort possible to minimize civilian casualties and minimize impact on civilians.
But they're literally taking out, smoking their own people that are held hostage. Literally. Like, what is this guy saying? They're not doing that. Why the hell you think there are thousands upon thousands of people in the streets right now that are literally protesting? They don't actually care. Good golly, Miss Molly, man.
As it relates to the footage that your organization has shared, again, I'm just going to refrain from commenting on specific operations as we do not have full circumstances of what on the ground from here. This isn't an American operation. I'm not on the ground there to speak to the full parameters of the situation.
Hold up. Wait a minute. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when there's body cam footage or somebody takes cell phone video of the police committing brutality against a citizen, and then the people who are in charge go, well, I don't know the entire situation. We have to conduct an investigation, even though it's right in front of you. We don't know the entire context. They were literally waving a white flag and unarmed with their hands in the air. That's a war crime. And yet, you're like, well, I don't know. Don't get me started.
But again, any civilian death is heartbreaking, and any civilian life lost is one too many. And we have made that clear with the Israelis, and will continue to do so.
Beyond that comment about it being heartbreaking, which is a platitude we often hear, would you urge, given that you broadly support IDF operations in the Gaza Strip, would you support a Israeli investigation of what happened in that video? Given that they're waving a white flag and they represented no threat.
That is for the IDF to undertake and determine based on the circumstances of that situation.
He only asked if you support that. He didn't. Oh my God, these people.
I will say is that we have been clear to our Israeli partners that they need to take every possible measure to avoid civilian harm during an operation and investigate credible allegations of law or of war violations when they arise.
Just because you say it doesn't mean that it actually will get done, number one. Number two, you could be just giving them a wink and a nod. It's just like, if chopping a tree was illegal and you secretly supported it, but you have to make it look like you're not in support of it. So it's just like, stop chopping that tree. You know what I mean? It's not right. Oh my goodness. Oh no, stop chopping the tree. It's damaging to the environment. Don't you know that? That's what it feels like to me what's going on, right? Am I crazy? Am I out of my mind right now? Because that's what it feels like to me. Put in the comments if you think, either I'm crazy or if you think I'm right on point, because that's what it seems like to me.
That is for our Israeli partners in the IDF to speak to.
Just on this, Vedant, you said that we don't have the full facts or something like that in a minute. Like, did you actually reach out specifically to Israel about this footage and try to get whatever the facts that you guys are seeking?
This footage just arrived earlier this morning, so I don't have any specifics of our diplomatic conversations around this to speak to.
How about the footage that arose last week and the week before and the week before and the week before
not similar, awfully close instances. Have you ever gotten an explanation from the Israelis? Have you ever gotten a finding from the Israelis of what their investigation, if they promised one?
I'm not going to speak to private diplomatic conversations, Matt, but this is something that we raise continuously with the Israelis. The secretary has done so, other officials in.
How many times are you going to keep raising this before you actually realize that they actually just don't care? Oh, we raised our concerns. That doesn't do crap. That doesn't do crap. Like, no. You don't just raise them. Honestly, these are sanctionable offenses. That's what it looks like to me. These are offenses that are like, nah, bro, you guys need to be sanctioned for all the war crimes you guys are committing. If China did this, there would be special reports all over the corporate media about this. And yet, nothing.
Our government have done so and will continue to do it.
Okay, well, have you ever gotten an answer from the Israelis?
I'm just not gonna speak to the privacy of certain diplomatic conversations, Matt. But we have been clear that there is a moral and strategic imperative to take as many steps as possible to minimize civilian casualties.
That's fine that you say that, but then when you are asked specific questions like this relating to specific footage, and this is not the first time that this has happened. You've been asked repeatedly about this, and then you come back and say, well, we've raised questions with you. We've asked the Israelis questions. Have you ever gotten a response to any of those?
These conversations.
I'm not asking you for the details. I just want to know.
We have these conversations are private. We have raised with the Israelis specific circumstances, and we have
you have
received
gotten answers.
Correct. I'm not going to speak to those conversations right now.
In any case, are you aware of that the Israelis say we screwed up here?
I'm just not going to speak to the private conversations, Matt.
And on this one,
Yeah.
Since it sounds like you haven't had a chance to ask about this one, are you planning to ask about this particular instance or no?
I'm just not going to speak to specific diplomatic conversations. What I will just reiterate, Humaira, is that we talk to our Israeli counterparts all the time, regularly, from various interlocutors across our government, and we'll continue to do so. And front and center, part of those engagements will continue to be the moral and strategic imperative that our Israeli partners have to minimize the impact on civilians.
Good boy. Good boy. You didn't answer any questions. That's what you did. Good boy. You made sure that you defended Israel and you didn't answer the questions from journalists who actually wanted to know what Israel plans to do, what the United States plans to do in conjunction with the war crimes that Israel's committing. Wink and nod, baby. Wink and nod. When it comes to what has been done, it is clear that these war crimes are going to continue. Because when you have the United States behind your back, you feel emboldened to do whatever you want to do in order to pursue this atrocity that you're committing. And so this is why it's so important that we do not stop when it comes to pointing out the atrocities that's happening on the ground in Gaza. Don't stop speaking about it. And always relate it back to how it affects us even here at home. So that's what's going on right now. Stay tuned, folks. We got more to talk about. Going to go to the chat. If you guys have not already, please make sure to give the stream a like. Thank you so very much. Pushes me out into the algorithm. And while you're here as well, just want to give a big thank you and a shout out to all the patrons on Patreon as well as on Coffee, and anybody who sends me any type of mutual aid through PayPal. It means the world to me. You guys have no idea how it helps me in keeping the lights on, literally. So thank you so very much. And yes, I am still demonetized. So if you'd like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. Yes, thank you so very much. Also, just so that you guys are aware, I also do have tiers on Patreon. Sorry, almost said PayPal. I do also have tiers on Patreon, so I will share that with you guys as well, so that you guys can know what you're getting into. And thank you so very much. Also have a slight little announcement too. So thank you so very much to everybody. There we have JB members, Solidarity, Comrade, JB Fonters, Super JB Fonters, Super Duper JB Fonters, and Mega JB Fonters. So thank you so very much to everyone as well. And thank you to all the new patrons that have been that have come in lately. I shared this on Thursday, but I'll share here as well. Thank you to Carrie Perillo as well for being a new patron as well. Also, just a quick little announcement. I finally made it to 3,500 subs. Thank you so very much to everybody for this. It is humbling, but at the same time, I am so grateful for you guys getting me there. I'm on my way to 5,000. Surely, slowly but surely. And so thank you so very much for putting your trust in me to bring you this news and education as well. So thank you. So we're going to go to, let's see here. What happened with my Rockfin stream? Something happened with my Rockfin stream? Make sure it's still going live. Okay. So let's go to the chat. So we have Seth Stuff says, so happy to catch the live. Yes, you are with me live. So thank you so very much for coming in. Mouse SF says, was your channel demonetized? Yes, it's been demonetized since October. So yes, thank you so very much. Cobra Commander says, oh, really? You know, I'm an okay chess player. Yeah, thank you so very much as well. We have CBC voter coming in saying, happy Saturday at JB. Good to see you. Thank you so very much. Marcus Shaw says, that man is bulldozing over that security. Yeah, I would have been doing the same thing. Yup. Basically. All right. Marxist Saul says, nobody can stand up to the U.S. government because it's too geographically safe. The only one who can force the U.S. government is the working class here. That is basically the only way to do it, is to really stand up and say no and enforce the no. But yes, I agree with that. Roger Meadows says Sabby called him sugar son. I saw that, man. I wasn't going to bring it up, but yeah, he's a high fructose corn syrup sogger. But yeah, dear God, y'all going to get me in trouble on this channel. I'm telling you. Yes, Mouse SF says Blinken's adoptive father is one of Netanyahu's closest friends. Yeah, I saw that. That is crazy, and it just goes to show how connected they really are. Marxist Saul says he could have kept saying that Israel has the right to defend itself over and over again. Yeah, he pretty much was saying that just the entire time while defending war crimes. But that's the way they go. That's their MO. Now we're going to go into this next segment right here. Don't celebrate just yet. Let's get into this story because I think it is deeply important for us to have context within this as well. So the country of South Africa has taken Israel to court, and it has charged them with committing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza for the last 100 days. And the ICJ has reached a ruling. Now, this is not a final ruling, mind you. A trial has to take place further down the line. But here's the thing. If Israel is committing a genocide, then this is one of the reasons why it is important that this takes place, because their charge is of genocide. Now, many are celebrating the ruling as of yesterday. And this ruling is a good thing, but it's hollow in the grand scheme of things. Now, let's go over what the ruling was, and then we'll talk about why we should not be celebrating just yet. So, let me share this. And let's go over what the judge says. Now, we're going to share this from Asal Rod. Shout out to her. So, Asal Rod says the International Court of Justice finds that there is sufficient basis for South Africa's case against Israel and will not dismiss the case as Israel requested. This is an historic moment. The court's decision makes U.S. complicity more difficult for Biden's officials to deny. So, let's go over this just so that we're clear.
The acts and omissions complained of by the applicant appear to be capable of falling within the provisions of the Genocide Convention. In the court's view, at least some of the acts and omissions alleged by South Africa to have been committed by Israel in Gaza appear to be capable of falling within the provisions of the convention. In light of the following, the court concludes that, prima facie, it has jurisdiction pursuant to Article 9 of the Convention to entertain the case. Given this conclusion, the court considers that it cannot accede to Israel's request that the case be removed from the general list.
So, that's basically what is said. That South Africa has accused Israel of genocide. Israel denies it, but they want the case thrown out. The court says South Africa actually has a valid reason to accuse Israel of genocide, and they rejected Israel's request to have the case thrown out. So that's what happened. So, how did the court rule? Now we're going to get into that, because this is also important. I want you guys to pay close attention to these rulings. So, let me share the screen again. This is from Suleiman Ahmed. Shout out to him. So, it says breaking ICJ rulings against Israel and in favor of South Africa. In a ruling of 15-2, the state of Israel shall take all measures to prevent the commission of genocide to Gaza. And number 2, 15-2 says the state of Israel shall ensure that the military not commit any acts of genocide. And number 3, 16-1, Israel shall take all measures to punish all public solicitations to genocide. Now, these public solicitations What are they? Public solicitations would be any Israeli official that talks about or advocates for genocidal acts which have been done by Israeli officials, and basically saying, you guys must stop this. So, like saying, we will, like one of the, I think it was the defense minister saying the halting of water, food, fuel, and electricity to Gaza, things like that, that is genocidal in nature, right? The request and saying things like the wanting of the bombing of hospitals and of refugee camps and mosques and churches and the like, saying that they are children of the darkness versus the children of the light, right? So this is why it is important that they bring this out too. All right, so let's continue. Number 4, Israel from 16:1 says, Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to address adverse conditions to life in the Gaza Strip. So when it comes to the conditions of no water or dirty water, they need to fix that. They need to allow the food and aid to come in so that the civilians are taken care of. You literally have right now people who are in medical facilities. By the way, all the hospitals are gone. All of them. They're gone. They have no medical care. So any type of medical care that they're giving, people who have to endure surgeries are getting surgeries without anesthesia. If you've ever been through surgery, and I have many times, just waking up and having the pain is harsh. Having to go through surgery without anesthesia is something that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. That's what they're going through. You have women that are literally giving birth without any type of anesthesia. They're doing C-sections without anesthesia. So, and then you have Israelis literally blocking the trucks from coming in. Let's continue. (15:2). Israel shall take the effective measures to preserve evidence of actions impacting the Genocide Convention. And then number 6, 15:2, Israel shall submit to the court a report on all measures taken to follow the orders of this court within 1 month. So it sounds kind of weird, right? Like, it's not saying immediately, it's saying, okay, you guys got 1 month to do this. What? What the hell? What did you notice about those rulings? We're going to sum this up through one of our comrades, Richard Medhurst. He summed this up. Let's get into it. Richard Medhurst says, "It is my job to translate politician to English, so let me explain what the ICJ just ruled. Israel can keep slaughtering Palestinians. Take your time and stop announcing the genocide when you speak Hebrew. Also, give Palestinians some food before you shoot them back in a few years." This is why I said do not celebrate so quickly. Because yes, while this is in a positive direction, Palestinians are still going to keep getting killed. They're still going to keep dying. even what we have to take into consideration is, was what happened in the ICJ meaningless? I don't want to say that it was meaningless, because what South Africa did was very important. But we have to take things into context, right? So let me share this. This is from Ali Abunima from Electronic Antifada. He says, a ceasefire is what you demand in an armed conflict. In a genocide, you demand an immediate end to all genocidal acts. And that is exactly what the ICJ ordered with immediate effect. Please stop helping Israel spin its historic defeat as a win. He continues, equally important to remember that ICJ ruling is not about what Israel will do. Israel will ignore any ruling. It is about forcing the rest of the world to take seriously their obligations to stop an entity now officially accused of genocide by the world's highest court. So, you know, and I know that it is officially a genocide, because the ICJ is like, well, you guys need to stop this because it's looking like a genocide. So now we know it is official. Yeah, it's a genocide. So I want you guys to also see the method of South Africa and what they did, and see it as a positive step in the right direction. It's a step. So it is not without reaching the goal, right? What South Africa did is important. With what Indonesia now is doing with declaring the occupation to be illegal and saying that the occupation needs to end, that's what Indonesia is doing. They are doing something that's valid. That should be done as well. So I'm going to share this with you as well. This actually came from TikTok, and I want to share this with you guys. This is also deeply
I want to make
important.
it very clear that South Africa is playing.
So make sure I increase the size. All right. So listen to this person. And this gives a lot more context.
I want to make it very clear that South Africa is playing a game. South Africa is playing the game. We know that the ICJ is just an arm of the UN, which is just an organization that was created to subdue certain powers, because some powers cannot be subdued by the UN, right? South Africa is just playing the game as the game is meant to be played. So there was an agreement. There are international laws. South Africa is just trying to show us that this is what they say and this is what they do. Because it seems that the information that many people believe is that international law is there to safeguard, right? Prevent the next world war. No, it's there to put into submission certain countries. It's there to control world power. South Africa is using the ICJ, their court system, to expose them, to show that even if you follow their rules, they will still find a way around it. And the more we are informed of this, the more we become aware, the more we begin to hold them accountable. We no longer walk around blind and ignorant to the things that are going on around the world. So yes, it may not give the verdict that we want, but it is beginning or continuing the awareness that we need as a global society. This is not just about one country. This is a global thing. As a global society, we need to be aware, and that is what this court case in the ICJ that South Africa is doing. This is, to me, what is most important. This is the key thing to me. So keep your eyes open, listen, be aware, stop being ignorant, learn. History is unfolding before our eyes. We hate it. We hate living through history, but this is how it happens. Keep your eyes open.
Absolutely. So this explains why the ICJ did not call for a ceasefire. Remember, these rulings never stated that Israel needs to stop its offensive. Just that the killing of civilians must stop. But we know that, one, the killing of civilians won't stop, and two, the goal is not only to keep the illegal settlements, but to expand them and grow Israel beyond the present borders, aka Greater Israel, which means taking out more Palestinians in the process. The resistance won't stop until the illegal occupation ends. So, let me share this. And this is from Edward Snowden. Of course, Edward Snowden is considered a hero, especially for a lot of us. But here he puts this in context. He says, the reason the ICJ didn't order an Israeli ceasefire in the Palestinian genocide case is not for lack of evidence, in my opinion, but for fear that they could not yet enforce the ruling. For the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, to function, the United States, the European Union, must first stop serving as an accessory to the crime. They are literally accessories to the crime. And as long as they continuously do that, then nothing can really change. Because these world powers are continuing to keep the genocide going. They're complicit in it. And that's what's happening. So, people saying that the court did call for a ceasefire essentially are wrong. What the court did call for is, like a referee, is for Israel to stop doing illegal moves in the fighting. It's like when two boxers are boxing and the referee tells one of the boxers to stop doing an illegal move. Does the referee stop the fight? No. He just says, oh, you can't do that move. Meanwhile, the Palestinians, and of course, by extension, the Palestinian resistance, they want the fighting to stop. Meaning a ceasefire. But Israel is so ambitious for the land and resources that they will keep doing illegal moves to take the Palestinians down. Why do they keep doing this? So they can get their hands on the LNG, the liquefied natural gas. They want to get that oil under Gaza and off the coast of the West Bank, and they want to build that Ben Gurion Canal. That's what this is all about. And the U.S. is on board for this because the corporations are on board with this. That's what they are with to the end of the day. Now, I'm going to share this with you guys too. Because this is also very important. An Israeli said this, and I agree. Share screen. If you're Israeli or Jewish, you need to hear this.
אומר שהאמריקנים ביקשו מאיתנו ללכת להאג, והם הבטיחו לנו שיהיה לנו וטו. מדהים, אני עד עכשיו זאת הייתה ההשערה שלי, עכשיו אני מתחיל להבין שזה מן המפורסמות.
כן.
מן המפורסמות.
פרופסור משה כהן אליהו לא אומר סתם דברים.
בדיוק, כשאנחנו הלכנו להאג, זאת אומרת, עד לכאן הגיעה השפעתם של האמריקנים, דרך כנראה רון דרמר, כי ראינו שרון דרמר הוא היה זה שהמליץ על אהרון ברק, ויכול להיות שיש לנו פה בכלל קנוניה אמריקנית על הראש שלנו. על הראש שלנו.
So he said it feels like it could be an American conspiracy at our expense. Well, let's continue.
תמימים, יעקב?
ברור, אני אסביר לך למה. כי פרופסור אילי צריך להסביר לי עוד דבר אחד. יכול להיות שפסק הדין הזה, או אפילו בחוות הדעת, יש לה חשיבות לאמריקנים, לדיני המלחמה שלהם, לסוגיות אחרות שבהם הם עוסקים. יכול להיות?
זה פסק דין שישפיע בצורה דרמטית על האמריקאים.
אז אנחנו...
רגע, משהו אומר לך ברדוגו.
So that means that we are the sheep.
כבש, אנחנו הכבש לשחיטה.
מה אתה אומר על זה?
Sheep that will serve as a sacrifice. Basically meaning saying that Israel is the sacrificial lamb of the United States. I agree. Yes, Israel is the sacrificial lamb of the West. They don't care about Jews or Israelis as long as they can keep putting their life on the line to exterminate the Arabs in the region for the West. This is why they have forced military service in Israel. Yes, it's conscription. If you are of military age and you go to live in Israel, you have to fight in the IDF. If the United States actually cared about Jews and Israelis, they would have never sent billions of dollars and weapons to Nazis in Ukraine. The United States does not care about Jewish people, and the United States does not care about Israelis. You got to remember, there are still remnants of Operation Paperclip in Washington. They're running Washington. What was Operation Paperclip? Operation Paperclip was basically an operation that took Nazis in Germany and brought them here to the United States. And they put them in positions of government so that they can learn from them and how they fought in Second World War. Many fascist sympathizers are in the deep state and are running corporations that also run our government, and they cannot wait to get their grubby little hands on the resources in the Middle East. They did it to Iraq, they did it to Afghanistan, they did it to Libya and North Africa. They're trying to do it in many other different parts of the world where resources are rich. So remember this, in the end, it's all about money and resources. Always go back to the money. So we're going to take another nuanced look at this because I think this is also really important. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. And this is from Fiorella Isabel, friend to the channel. Here's what she says, very nuanced. She says, I don't get why many are calling this a victory. Today, the ICJ was on trial, and it proved that what many in many in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and the neo-colonized world have been saying, there is no international law. Its ruling doesn't commit to admitting that Israel is indeed committing a genocide. It simply places the burden on them to police themselves, which is a failed method. as Israel will continue to lie as they've been doing. There is no consequence placed on them, at least for a month, in which they will continue killing Palestinians. No one but Israel is enforcing this. So who will enforce them, and what will be the punishment? Nothing. This should have been done now, not in 1 month. There is a mention of releasing Israeli hostages, but what about the thousands of imprisoned Palestinians in Israeli jails? Now remember, I have actually spoken about the thousands of Palestinians that are still kept in jail. A lot of them are kept in without trial, without charge, simply because they're Palestinian. By the way, 20% of Israel consists of Arabs. Over half of the population in their prisons are Arab. What does that remind you of? Let's continue. The ruling proved that the only salvation for Palestinians is the access of resistance. International law is far too cowardly to act according to the necessary conditions. It is such conditions which should force Israel to cease all military attacks, leave occupied areas, and be sanctioned until they do so. Conditions that fail to make Palestine as a state, but continue to call the Israeli project one. I am not surprised. Western voices hail this as a feel-good victory for which they can pat themselves on the back. But it is not this. In 1 month, Israel has never respected any law. A Zionist occupation project will continue killing thousands more. In 1 month, Palestinians will continue dying. In 1 month, there will still be a genocide because Israel has received the equivalent of a slap on the wrist. Today, the ICJ proved international law is but a feel-good Western virtue signal, as the brutal reality for Palestinians is their own people and own resistance is the only thing that will liberate them. Children and families blown to pieces don't give a damn about how good Westerners feel about this so-called advance. Good for who? Not for Palestinians. They'll continue fighting, as will the resistance, with or without the veneer of international law, which so happens to only function for those in North America, Europe, the UK, or their chosen proxies. Not for the nations that have been occupied, exploited, and vilified by Western imperialism. Glad y'all feel good, but to Palestinian families dying every day, this matters little. They already knew this. It is you who needs to grasp reality. Now, she continues. She says, I will add that this is historic, and I'm thankful for South Africa's actions and the actions of those who followed suit. They did put both Israel and the ICJ on trial. Israel has failed, but not entirely. The ICJ has failed to do what needs to be done, even if the intent was good. Diplomacy can only go so far when the only political and distant from the ground reality those in Gaza are experiencing. It's easy to hail this as a victory when you're far from war. Is this a ceasefire? No. Is this on Israel's time? Yes. Will more Palestinians die? Yes. I don't consider that a victory, but a failure of international law to meet the emergency demands of the moment. I can tell Israel to immediately stop killing Palestinians and investigate themselves, the same way I can tell crooked cops to stop killing people and investigate themselves. The same way I can tell a bank robber to stop robbing banks and jail themselves. The same way I can tell a psychopathic killer to stop killing and imprison themselves. That's not a ceasefire. It is not enforceable. For the record, I am not giving Israel a victory, but I'm not giving the ICJ one either. Palestinians also don't get a victory. The only victory I am giving is to the one that South Africa and others for taking the pioneering action to try to do the right thing. So that's what the thing is. This is why I say we cannot be sitting here celebrating like this yet. Even the African foreign minister expressed disappointment. So this is straight from them. Let's share this.
I believe that in exercising the order, there would have to be a ceasefire. Without it, the order doesn't actually work. I would have wanted a ceasefire. No, they didn't.
Are you disappointed?
But how?
They didn't specify that.
I have no way that I'm going to say I'm disappointed. I hoped for it, but the fact of delivering humanitarian aid, the fact of taking measures that reduce the levels of harm against persons who have no role in what Israel is combating, for me, requires a ceasefire. And I believe Israel would have to attend to how it conducts its search for the hostages and for those Hamas individuals who carried out the October 7 attack. I believe that in exercising the order, there would have to be a ceasefire.
So according to her, there is no call for ceasefire. She's literally one of the foreign ministers that led the charge against Israel. They don't want a ceasefire, and they want the war crimes to continue. How do we know? Well, let's take a look. Here's a journalist. You guys have probably saw this before, calling for more war crimes.
חס וחלילה, פשע מלחמה זה אני, אתה רגל על הגב. פשע מלחמה זה אני מודה, אני אגיד את זה פה, לא אכפת לי שירדו עליי, אוספים פה חומרים. אני לא נרדם טוב בלי שאני רואה בתים קורסים בעזה. מה אני אעשה? עוד בתים, עוד מגדלים.
So he's calling for the bombing of more buildings, more houses in Gaza. He says he doesn't care.
שלא יהיה להם לאן לחזור. אגב, בתקופת התנ"ך גם היו זורים את האדמה במלח. הם צריכים לזכור עם עמלק. הם צריכים לזכור את זה להרבה מאוד זמן. אי אפשר להגיע לאיזה הסדר מיד. סליחה, זה רק אני. זה פשע מלחמה.
They're blatant in their advocacy for war crimes. This is what a lot of them feel. I'm not going to say all because I don't want to be general. I don't want to generalize, but a lot of them feel this way. This is what Zionism is. Is it sick? Yes. It's depraved, in my opinion. What power does a court have if it can't enforce the law? It can't sanction Israel. It can't force them to stop. This proves that the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and the United States nations do not have any real true power. It's not a governing power that can be neutral arbiter of justice and order. They're merely symbols that are controlled by the West to manipulate us into thinking that such an institution exists. The only real justice we in the exploited class have is resistance. And I'll share this as well. Shout out to Nuno Marquez. Says the ICJ has proven international law is a joke. Shame. That's what a lot of them are saying now. Like, what good is international law if you can't enforce international law? Now, there was a reply by the defense minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant. And we're going to read that. Yoav Gallant says, the state of Israel does not need moral preaching to separate terrorism from the civilian population in Gaza. The International Court of Justice in The Hague went above and beyond when it granted South Africa's anti-Semitic request to discuss the claim of genocide in Gaza and added sin to crime when it did not reject the petition outright. So basically what he's saying is that even though we committed genocide, we didn't want South Africa to charge us with it. And in doing so, they consider taking them to court based on the 25,000 people that are now killed in Gaza to be genocide. They consider charging that as anti-Semitic. They're really using that line. When the 25,000 people are murdered, over half of which are children. The monster continues. He says, whoever is looking for justice will not find it in the leather chairs in The Hague, but in the Hamas tunnels in Gaza, where our 136 abductees are kept and those who murdered our children are hiding. By the way, if he's talking about actual children, the only child that was actually killed on October 7th was a baby, and they were killed by Israeli fire. But he won't tell you that. Those who are looking for justice will not find it in the operating instructions found in the pockets of the Nova terrorists who were instructed to, quote, drink the blood of the you-know-who, but in the spirit of the IDF document found in the pockets of our fighters working to protect human dignity. Human dignity, you say? 25,000. I see 25,000 reasons to not believe that. Says the state of Israel will not forget October 7th. And Palestinians haven't forgotten 1948, 1967, 2008, 2014, 2023, 2024. They still have not forgot October 8th, October 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. They have not forgotten the 10,000 plus children that were massacred by their hand. They still have not forgotten that. Says the IDF and the security agencies will continue to act and dismantle the Hamas regime, eliminate the military capabilities, and bring about the return of the abductees to their homes. Trust the commanders of the IDF and all the soldiers who are members of the security forces. So this is the monster who also asked and made sure that anybody who is in Palestine has no food, water, fuel, or electricity. So all the people that are dying right now are by this guy's hand. Him and Netanyahu. These are who they are. They're monsters. With that being said, Israel is losing the battle on two fronts. They're losing the information battle, and they're losing the battle on the ground itself against Palestinian resistance. In reality, a ceasefire would actually benefit them as well, but their stubbornness will be their downfall. So, I'm going to go to this video, and this is a great explanation from the Electronic Intifada. Make sure I get this correctly. So let me share. Let me see. Gotta go to. Okay. Just want to make sure I get my timestamp. Let's go to right here. Okay. So let's go
to this, which I think we're starting to see from the Americans and the French, that the Israelis need, which they needed in 2006 as well. We'll remember in 2006, they didn't want a ceasefire in 2006. And then they carried out the ground operation, got smoked, and then wanted a ceasefire.
And it's
so remember, ceasefires were proposed since 2006, and Israel didn't want a ceasefire. Interesting. Could have gotten one 18 years ago, but didn't happen. Let's continue.
It's important to note now, John, on this. This is very important because this also tells us something about, we can look at it from the perspective of the videos, which shows what's happening on the battlefield, but the diplomatic developments also tell us what's happening on the battlefield. And what I mean by that is that Israel is desperate for a ceasefire, but without calling it a ceasefire, because they have painted themselves into this corner where they're saying they have all these big goals. We're going to destroy Hamas, obliterate Hamas. Gaza is going to be changed for generations. We're going to free the hostages, etc., etc. And they know, because they said it in the beginning, stupidly, they said it, and Blinken said it, that a ceasefire means Hamas won. So now they can't agree to a ceasefire that they desperately want, because by their own definition, that's defeat for them. Their publicly stated definition, that's defeat for them. So what are they?
So by that very definition, because in order to exchange hostages, you need to have a ceasefire. But since they don't want to give a ceasefire, that means that there can be no hostage exchange, which basically means Israel has shot themselves in the foot. They're losing. They're losing badly. Let's continue.
What are they doing now? They keep sending these proposals through the mediators, whether it's Qatar or Egypt. And the latest one is, we'll give you a 2-month ceasefire in exchange for freeing the prisoners of war, and we'll allow the senior leaders of Hamas to leave the Gaza Strip, and all sorts of other things.
No release of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails, though. That was also part of their
proposal. The point is, I mean, it's all these different things.
Yeah.
And Hamas is saying, no, we will not accept that. Not for a month, not for 2 months, not for 6 months. It has to be a permanent ceasefire.
Yeah.
That's our condition. So the point I'm making is they feel that they can hold that line. So their assessment of what's happening on the battlefield, clearly their assessment of what resources they have, is that they can hold that line.
And just letting you know, in this video, they go and show the actual footage from Palestinian resistance. I'm gonna be honest with you, those Israeli soldiers are nincompoops. They're idiots. They are fools. the type of warfare that the Palestinian resistance is engaging in, the IDF is playing checkers. The Palestinian resistance is playing chess. Like, holy crap. So when people go, well, the IDF is winning, they only win when you're in the air, literally bombing. When they're on the ground, oh, they're screwed. They are screwed. And it's in 4K, baby. It's wild. They don't teach them true on-the-ground warfare because that's all they know how to do is bomb.
He stated that very clearly a couple of weeks ago. Abu Ubaidah, the spokesperson for the military wing of Hamas, the Al-Qassam brigades, Abu Ubaidah as he's known. That's the only way we know him. He's the man who appears with his face covered in the keffiyeh, and he's sort of this legendary figure. He made that very clear. We will not accept anything less than a permanent ceasefire. Osama Hamdan, another senior Hamas leader in Beirut, who gives these daily press conferences, has been crystal clear about that. So the Israelis are the ones who constantly keep increasing their offer. First, they were saying a 2-week ceasefire and free the prisoners. Now we're up to 2 months. And this is coming from the Israeli side.
The Israelis don't have the ability to continue this war indefinitely, and the Palestinians are not going to surrender. This idea that Sinwar is surrounded by captives is ridiculous. The idea that they're going to have any kind of negotiations happening that involve, I mean, I don't want to predict, but I think one of the things that I would be confident predicting is that Yahya Sinwar is not going to take exile as part of this deal. So these kind of talks are ridiculous. And what you see is Israel looking for a way out of a war that they're losing. And
look, the Palestinians, especially the resistance, they live by the creed of we'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. That's basically what it is. Because they're literally protecting their land, where their families have existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. They're not going down. What is Israel to do?
We've told you that for 4 months, that they're going to lose this war and that they're fighting against Palestinians who have dedicated their entire life to this liberation struggle. And if they didn't and they weren't dedicating their life to it before, they definitely are now. And this is no question that this is a national liberation struggle, that nobody's going to surrender. No Palestinians wanting that. We're not seeing anything like that. We're seeing footage every single day of devastation of attacking civilians and those civilians supporting the resistance. You're not going to genocide your way out of this national liberation struggle.
So basically, that's what it is. And then a lot of people will go and say against the Palestinians and say, but they're shooting rockets, they're shooting missiles. Here's the thing. Here, let me ask you this question, and I've asked this many times before. Does an occupied people have the right to resist occupation? Do they? Let's take a look, because I think this is important context. Palestinians have a legal right to armed struggle. The blurb says it is time for Israel to accept this as an occupied people. Palestinians have the right to resist in every way possible. This is from Stanley Cohen back in 2017. He says Stanley Cohen is an attorney and human rights activist who has done extensive work in the Middle East and Africa. It says, in accordance with international humanitarian law, wars of national liberation have been expressly embraced through the adoption of the additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions in 1949 as a protected and essential right of occupied people everywhere. It says, finding evolving vitality of humanitarian law for decades, the General Assembly of the United Nations, once described as the collective conscience of the world, has noted that the right of peoples to self-determination, independence, and human rights. Indeed, as early as 1974, Resolution 3314 of the UNGA prohibited states from any military occupation, however temporary. In relevant part, the resolution not only went on to affirm the right to self-determination, freedom, and independence of peoples forcibly deprived of that right, particularly peoples under colonial and racist regimes or other forms of alien domination, but noted the right of the occupied to struggle and to seek and receive support in that effort. The term armed struggle was implied without precise definition in that resolution and many other early ones that upheld the right of indigenous persons to evict the occupier. This imprecision was to change on December 3rd, 1982. At that time, UNGA Resolution 3743 removed any doubt or debate over the lawful entitlement of occupied people to resist occupying forces by any and all lawful means. The resolution reaffirmed the legitimacy of struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from a colonial and foreign domination and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. Basically meaning the resistance that's going on in Gaza is legal. It's legal. Therefore, what the Israeli government has done is genocide, which is illegal. The resistance by Palestinians, which they have been doing, is actually legal. Because they are the original occupiers of the land. The people who are coming from Germany, Poland, Russia, United States, Canada, they are occupiers. The settlements are illegal. The settlements that are coming into West Bank are illegal. Therefore, who has a right to resist? You can't tell me to get out of my house if I've been here the entire time. You can't tell me that. We have to remember, if you're illegally occupied, you have the right to resist. Just like the indigenous people here on Turtle Island, they had the right to resist against the European colonialists who came here to steal their land. And now what happened? There was a genocide. There was a holocaust of indigenous people on this very land. Now we have them in what we call reservations. We talked about this in the book reading of Water and the Spirit. We talked about this on Thursday night when I premiered this book. It's good. You guys should go ahead and take a look at it. But this is what colonialism does. It takes something that doesn't belong to you and it keeps it as yours. But in order to be able to do that, you have to take something that doesn't belong to you. And then when the people who it actually belongs to resist, then you have to wipe them out. That's what it is. That's what colonialism is. Ultimately, what needs to happen is for the illegal occupation to end. Apartheid needs to disappear. And for the land to be given back to the Palestinian people, and for them to have self-determination in their own state. What can we do? Because a lot of times we talk about the problems. What are the solutions? keep educating ourselves and others. Now, Electronic Intifada is a great resource. And then you can pay attention to more journalists and educators like Dan Cohen, Max Blumenthal, Abby Martin, Norm Finkelstein, people who are in independent media. This is why it's important to support independent media like myself, RBN, Savvy Sabs, Heartlands Media, Indie News Network, Lee Camp, Danny Haifong, the like. Boycotting also is helping. McDonald's is now starting to say, hey, start spending money with us again. They're not too happy right now. So boycotting corporations who support the Zionist state, which is working and supporting, and then also work and support the Palestinians here who are speaking out. Like for here in Orlando, you have the Florida Palestine Network, right? They're doing great work on the ground and bringing attention to the governments, the local governments, state governments, about what's going on and how we need to support the Palestinians and what their right to exist. Solidarity with all people who are oppressed is how we fight and make this system work for us. Do not stop until we are all free. Make sure to give the stream like while we're here, because that pushes me out into the algorithm. Thank you so very much. If you guys have not, then you guys can also subscribe to my Substack by going to jbfont.substack.com so you guys are aware of whenever I upload clips, go live, or write articles. So thank you so very much for. I'm going to head to the chat. I know you guys have a lot to say. Wow, you guys got a lot to say. All right, so let me see. Leah says ICJ is corrupt too. Some people are saying that. Do you agree? Gore says crab dance. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Pizza the Hut. Why is everybody posting crabs? Interesting. Sean Miller, nice to have you as well. Janice Anderson says this ruling also gives Ansar Allah legal defense for their actions against ships going to and from Israel or owned wholly or in part by Israelis. This is also a really good point, Janice. Thank you so very much. So what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea, especially through Yemen, which are stopping a lot of ships from going to Israel, this also means that they're literally trying to stop a genocide, which is legal, to stop and save Palestinian lives. So that's what this also signals to. Thank you so very much for that. Javier comes in and says, in 30 days, the Western countries and corporations will become legally liable globally. The global South will be able to enforce their rights. It's on them next. Yes. Now, 30 days, there's going to be a lot more Palestinians that are going to die. We're going to hit 30,000 plus. By the time we reach February 29th, there's going to be at least 5,000 more Palestinians. I foresee that. It is horrific what's going on. Joe Anthony says that's it in a nutshell. Yep. Okay, Guru says Sabby had a great football allegory explaining this yesterday. I'm proud. Good to see a black unit, Griffin. Nice to have you in here as well. Joe Anthony says, like the Ukrainians and many others before them. Thank you. This is true, Leah. Says U.S. goes where the money flows. Absolutely. Reverse Fulfillment says, I wonder how many IDF soldiers moved there from the West under the Jews back to the homeland movement. You only had to convert to Judaism and be 18. It's like a rabbi said, Judaism is a religion, not necessarily a ethnicity. So I can convert to Judaism and I would be considered a Jew. But then some people will say, yes, it is an ethnicity. There are Jewish Palestinians. They are Jews. I wonder how many synagogues were bombed in Palestine and in Gaza. Joe Anthony says Israel is a geostrategic stronghold of the U.S. Middle East policy. Yes, Joe Biden actually made that very clear over 30 years ago. Mouse says, ironically, today is the anniversary of the Russian liberation of Auschwitz. Yes. Yes, it was communists that liberated Auschwitz. Commies. Yes. How does that make you feel? It should make you feel good. Makes me feel good. They got rid of the fascists. Let's continue. Quantum Alchemist says JB wasn't shown to me to be live. Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely being throttled right now, but yeah. Hey, Desert Mantis, so good to see you. All right. Let's continue. Oh God, this got me. Ooh, this chaps my behind. Desert Mantis said Biden crowd 4 more years, 4 more years. Netanyahu crowd 4,000 more bombs, 4,000 more bombs. It is sick, man. Mr. Meepzor says Yemen gets labeled as a terrorist state for trying to enforce international law. Exactly. Like what? Like they're literally trying to enforce international law and they get labeled terrorist? Now, if the United States suddenly tried to enforce international law, oh, we're the arbiters of what's right and righteous and good in the world. But if another country like Yemen does it, it's suddenly terrorism? Like what? That doesn't make sense. They're literally saying, yeah, that's not right. We shouldn't be committing a genocide. It's weird, man. Let me continue. As Solano says, that diaper brigade is getting whooped in on the street war. So they call the IDF the diaper brigade. Yeah! Oh my gosh. It's true. And some of them are accused of wearing diapers too. And no matter how many TikToks the IDF does, we don't believe them. Mr. Meepsor says Israel has conscripts. They're not fighters. They're motivated mostly by racism. Bloodthirst and peer pressure alone will not get what they want. Yep. Mouse says kind of the plot of Independence Day. Independence Day is just a movie about imperialism and colonialism. That's all it really is. Think about it. Aliens show up out of nowhere, unannounced, and then want to get rid of all the people indigenous to Earth and take it over and use up the resources. What does that sound like? I don't know about you, but really, the calls from incoming inside the house. That's exactly what's going on. Good Lord. Kuya Grigor says, JB, I went to college with a Palestinian guy, super crazy smart, Nasser. And he told me the whole thing. I was like, what the F? I thought they sent the Jews there to live with the Palestinian people. Like, yeah, right? Like, we think that, oh, they're supposed to be living in peace, right? And before 1948, they were. I'm telling you, these Europeans, colonizers, man. Now, there's a difference between the Europeans that are cool with everybody and then the European colonizers, right? The colonizers, they don't like us brown people, right? But then you have the cool Europeans, the ones, you know, like Claire Daly. She's like one of the cool Europeans, right? That's like, what did they do wrong? Just let them have their own land, right? See, this is why people like Claire Daly, we're down with people like her. She's one of the cool ones, right? The people who are like, what's the name? King Charles and all them, like, nah, we're not cool with them. Hell with them. Anywho, can't even think of their names. They're irrelevant anyway. They will be irrelevant in history. All right, let's continue. Oh, thank you, Kilia Grigors. All right. And yes, thank you, Mr. Mibzor. The Irish understand what it feels like to be colonized. Yes. And this is why the U.S. wants to replace international law with rules-based order. You know what's funny about the rules-based order line? The question is, who makes the rules? Huh. The person who has the biggest gun is the one that makes the rules. This is why I really want to see liberation for all indigenous peoples across the world, not just in Palestine. I want to see the indigenous people in Australia, the indigenous people in Africa, the indigenous people all over Turtle Island, all going all the way down to the southern tip. I want to see all these people liberated because they, number one, they deserve to have their land back. Number two, people who look like me and our ancestors were kidnapped from Africa, we need to have reparations, and we need to determine how much those reparations are and how it gets distributed. We need to determine that. And then on top of it, we need to change this entire system from the ground up so that it benefits all workers, the proletariat, the people who are at the bottom, so that everybody has their material needs met. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's what it is. Quantum Alchemist says, as I keep saying, when people say history is written by the victor, I reply, true, for now, until the next victor comes along and changes it again. And we must be the victors. So thank you so very much. I'm going to get going because, number one, I got to finish dinner. I got chicken in the oven, by the way. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's going to be on tonight. You know what I'm saying? But just to let you guys know, I have read the new book of Water in the Spirit by Melanoma Patrice Sommet. So this is Of Water in the Spirit, Ritual, Magic, and the Initiation in the Life of an African Shaman. This was great. I cannot wait to continue this book. We're going to continue it. So we did chapter 1, part 1. We're going to finish up chapter 1 in the next reading. So I can't wait to get to that. Also, I'll be continuing The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love. We're going to continue reading this. I really appreciate this book by Bell Hooks. She gets it. So if you guys have not, then you guys can also go into my playlist and you guys can look up the different book readings as well in my playlist. Also, we're going to do the finish. We're going to try to get this reading on and finish with Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. We're going to be getting into that too. I cannot wait to finish up with that. And once we're done with Laziness Does Not Exist, I'm going to get into this. Gaza Writes Back, short stories from young writers in Gaza and Palestine. This was edited by Rafayette Al-Arir, the gentleman that was murdered weeks ago, that we actually did a show on. So we're going to be also reading this. This actually is different written works from people who are Palestinian. So we're going to get into this as well. So I cannot wait to get into this as well. So this was a gift from one of the members of the RBN Orlando chapter. Thank you so very much, Sabiha. I can't wait to get into this as well. Now, just to let you guys know, we also are raising money for our mutual aid in Orlando. So if you guys would like to, you guys can donate via mutual aid at $ Orlando RBN through Cash App. We're trying to raise money principally for grocery gift cards and toiletries. So if you guys can do that, it's very much appreciated as well. So with that being said, I just want to thank you all for watching. Just checking on. Oh, we got to go into the Rockfin because I want to make sure that I get the Rockfin chat as well, because you guys got some things to say. You guys are a smart bunch over there. And by the way, Hempcar on Rockfin, I meant to thank you also for the $20 tip. I just want to make sure I take time out to thank you for that as well. Thank you so very much for the tip for $20 last stream. Appreciate it very much. Hempcar says, I guess the ruling is better than nothing. Not sure how this is helping Palestine. Yeah, it's somewhat better. You know, but we have to keep going. Hempcar continues and says, I guess the CIA work TikTok kids need to feel more, feels be fired, they can care, and more need celebs to make it cool. Yeah, they're gonna try to make it seem like supporting Israel is cool, but it's not. We all know what the dealio is. Says Chomsky called them old Europe and New Europe. As for white fourth generation immigrant occupying a Jibois land, I'm beginning to get fed up. I love to go back to Europe or Russia, Iran, Korea, Cuba. He said, what's up living on stolen land? Learn that in the tribe's language you're on, we need to change the lingo. Don't say goodbye or go with Christ. Say free Mumia. Yeah, free Mumia Abu Jamal. Says you must read books about Roger Meta says you must read books about Asa Philip Randolph. I sent you some titles on it. RBN is more like the Randolph than W.E.B. Du Bois. There's no problem. Appreciate your work. So thank you guys so much on Rockfin. All right. So I also have a video that I wanted to close out with. So let me share this, because I think this is important. because a lot of times, sometimes we get stuck with, well, what do we do? And like I said earlier, join different organizations as well. There are many different organizations local in your cities. In fact, let me share with you guys. Share with you guys this so that you guys are aware of what's going on, so you guys can send it to your friends, family, to educate them. Here is the electronic Antifada. So there you guys go. You guys can go there and they share what's going on. They also have a YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to share their YouTube channel with you guys so you guys can subscribe to their channel. They're almost to 100,000 subs. So if you guys can try to get them over that hump, I think that would be great. They talk about what's going on in Palestine as well. Because, yeah, all of our resistance is connected. Okay, so let me share this. This is from earlier today. And let me share this. Okay, so gotta get going. Gotta eat. My chicken's been slow cooking. Anyway, like I always tell you, water your plants, water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. If you want to, you can smoke them if you got them. If you want to, you can drink them if you got them. But if you ain't got them, then watch something hilarious because joy is revolutionary. Also, read because reading is fundamental. Also, to Mike, happy birthday, big bro. Love you very much from the top and bottom of my heart. So a big happy birthday to you. And please continue to not only think about the people in Palestine, but think about the people in Haiti and Sudan and Congo, and think about the Black people, those of us here that live around you too, because guess what? We are also still oppressed. Think about your indigenous neighbors. These include some of the indigenous neighbors that are below the border, right? So we have indigenous neighbors in Mexico, in Guatemala, El Salvador, in Venezuela, and many other different parts of the South of America. Also think about all of our brothers, sisters, and siblings down there too, because they matter as well. Solidarity with all peoples across the world. Please make sure to remember that nobody is free until we're all free, because that's what freedom truly means. True freedom means you do not encroach upon the rights of others. With that being said, mwah, forehead kisses to every single one of you. Take care and have a beautiful Saturday. I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/JBFont. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much. And you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.